or the Mona Lisa to be an artist. That it would.
Good evening, it's Friday night, just gone 7 o'clock, a wee bit late. We're back to traditionally being late, and you are tuned to the Friday night football pitch. Obviously, no show last week due to the fact that somebody was getting surgery, but we are back tonight, bigger and better than ever. Joined as always by Dennis Newell, and we are also joined by Hearts enthusiast, otherwise known as Graeme Duthie. We'll be looking back on the Hearts season so far. Or as it's gone, you know what I mean? We've got a few games left, Graeme, and we'll get into that. Also, big events in the Championship tonight. SFA, SPL have got things right. Culmination of the Championship tonight, absolutely superb. Looking at a few big games there. Obviously, praise to the winners of the league so far. And we've got a few other things to discuss as well, but we'll be looking at what's happening at Tynecastle. We'll no bother mention Player of the Year dues or anything like that. You know, we'll give all that a skip, Graeme. Guys, how are we? Dennis, Graeme, how's things tonight? Good evening to you both.
Good evening, Graeme.
All right, guys, what's happening?
Good evening, Cammy. Yeah, I'm okay. I'll start. Yeah, busy as usual with work, and weather's been a bit decent this week at times too, so can't grumble.
Yeah,
good football as well, of course.
Yourself, Graeme. Obviously, the season hasn't finished as how you would have hoped, but with Critchley going, I know you were a wee bit of doubt whether he should see the season out or not. What's your thoughts on that first and foremost? Then we'll get into the Championship.
Yeah, I think I'd backed him most of the season when a lot of Hearts fans didn't. I tried to give him time. I tried to say he's another window because one window's not enough. 6 months didn't feel enough. But I was at the game last week against Dundee and we were terrible. This is the Dundee side that conceded 71 goals in the league and we created very little. You could tell that it just wasn't going to happen last week. And I think the reaction of the crowd at the end of the game basically signed his warrant for him. They were booing him. They were shouting at him. It just wasn't going to work. And I didn't expect it to happen, I'll be honest, because my laddie wanted picture taken with the players last week. Why he'd won it after last week, I don't know. But we were still there at 6:30 last week getting photos and that taken. And there was rumours of a board meeting, but I thought nothing will happen. By the time I walked to town and got on the bus, he'd gone. But I think it was the right call. I think it was right. I've seen a few folks saying it was harsh, but we're 8th in the league. It's not good enough. It's not just on him. Players have got to take blame for this as well, but I think the decision was right to sack him.
Right. Do you think it should have came earlier, or do you feel maybe, as you say, a few games left of the season, would they maybe have been better waiting?
No, because I think we're on a downward spiral, if I'm going to be honest. It wasn't looking great. We'd not scored in the last 4 league games. We'd not won in our last 5 games. There was just something not quite right there. Again, I don't lay the blame at him. This isn't the players as well. They've got to take the blame for this as well, because it wasn't good enough. But his tactics were really baffling. His substitutions, like last week against Dundee, he took Benny Beningame off, one of our best players. And at the time, I thought it must have been injury, because you don't take Benny off. I thought it was an injury. When I heard Critchley after the game, he said it was tactical, and I thought, right, that's just wrong. That's baffling.
Yeah.
You look at the Motherwell game when we had to win to finish top 6, and he brought Craig Halcott on and stuck him up front. Things like that, you could just tell something wasn't quite right there. So I think as much as folk will probably say it's harsh, I think it was right. And as much as I criticise the board, and I probably will do later, I think they've made the right call on this one.
Yeah. Fair enough. It's definitely one of these things. I mean, you never let a club to get through 2 managers in a season, you know what I mean? But if the appointment has gone wrong over the last few weeks, as you say, perhaps the decision was the right one. As I say, we'll get into Player of the Year dues and everything else later on. Where we're focusing on Hearts, thoughts for the new manager? It seems, was it yourself that said about Derek McInnes?
Yeah, I don't think he will get it because Derek McInnes likes full control of a club. He likes to have control of transfers, and he won't have that at Hearts. He'd be working under a sporting director. He'd be working under a completely different structure than he's used to at Kilmarnock. So I don't see it. He's obviously the favourite with bookies and pundits because they don't know anyone else. All they see is Derek McInnes when a manager gets sacked. But again, I go back to the board. I don't trust them to get this right. And they have to get this right. This is a big decision. They got the Neil Critchley one wrong. This is a big, big call. They have to get this right. I've heard a lot of names mentioned. Honestly, when the bookies came out and it said Des Buckingham, I thought, who the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the one I want is Kim Helberg at Hammarby. Plays decent football, only 37, quite a young guy, but he's well thought of. He's the guy that I want. But my worry is that even with the analytics that we've got, it's still the board to make the final call. And my worry is that they'll go for the cheap option and appoint somebody like Don Cowie or Stephen Presley. We need someone that's going to unite the fans. That will do it, but in a completely different direction.
Yeah. Dennis, obviously it's not how things would have panned out. You know, that one time it looked as if Hearts were going to push for that top six. In fact, they were on the brink of it and should have made it. But things have just gone sadly awry over the last month and a half or so, at the same time as they've watched near neighbours Hibs into the ascendancy. Your thoughts on the appointment? Obviously, you've been a manager yourself, not an easy job, but your thoughts on the appointment?
You mean the dismissal or the appointment?
I'm sorry, the dismissal. Yeah, sorry.
Well, Graeme's in a better position to say exactly how the team has been playing. I'm watching bits and pieces. I do watch most of the games I can of Hearts, and I think to be honest, they have underachieved with the squad of players they've got. If I look at players in general, he said loyalty to players that I've mentioned on here before that should never have kicked a ball again for Hearts when they think they should be at a better club. You've got the captain there, which the team has been built around because he can't score goals anymore or play as well as he should be playing. And I think that players, and we all know that, get managers a sack rather than the other way about.
Yeah.
You know, the players will still be there next year. The guys that have not done the job for them, you better believe they'll still be there because they've got contracts. They don't lose any sleep about this at night. Absolutely none. So the poor manager who's worked his socks off, and there's no sentiment in football. I say this quite a lot on here. There's none in football. But when you look at it, when did he actually get the job, Graeme? Because I was looking there trying to remember when he actually took charge of Hearts.
He got it in October. So Stephen Naismith was sacked in October.
Right.
And
okay.
That's when Neil Critchley got it. So he's been in the job about 6 months.
Yeah. So I look at that and I think to myself, one transfer window with probably limited financial resources. You had the efforts coming from Brighton to help him out, and it did work because he's brought a big lad that plays up front and has done a great job. But what else has been filtered through from that stream that basically the manager has got time to work with? I just feel that there's a lot of times, and it's not just Hearts, there's a knee-jerk reaction when it doesn't work out. Now, I know at the top of the tree, it's been said at Hearts that they expect to be in second place. That's fantasy world because you need to throw money at that, and there's never enough money in relation to getting second place in Scotland. You could maybe get third or fourth, but that's not going to happen. Now, missing the cut, yes, disappointing because you've seen Hibs, who stuttered really badly at the start of the season, along with Hearts, have leapfrogged them. Now, to me, I think that's the reason why the managers get the bullet, rather than the fact the performances have not been great, but a lot of the Premier League teams have not been performing well. And so much so you just need to look at Motherwell in relation to how their season started and where they are now. You're almost juggling a pack of cards in this Premier League, outside the big two, really, to see who's going to jockey for that top spot. Hearts' expectations are higher than what they should really be looking at this moment in time. That's my personal thoughts. And what I would say again is you've got a good squad of players, probably better than 6 or 7 teams in the Premier League, without a doubt. But they've not performed, and the manager's paid the penalty for that. I know you were talking about substitutions and what he's done, but there comes a point when you scratch your head so much, you think you need to change it because it's not working. The only person that gets away with this is Postecoglou playing with Tottenham Hotspur, who basically just sticks to his guns. Critchley has tried to change it. It's not worked out for him. I thought he was a good appointment. In actual fact, I thought he was a breath of fresh air going to Hearts. His approach when he came in was very, very good. He got extra out of some players, and then it just dipped. It dipped to the point that I thought, if Hibs get past yous, I don't think there's any way back. And that's what's happened. And Hibs are not a better team than Hearts. I'll say that right now. They're definitely not a better team than Hearts. But they've got the points, and that's the difference. Back to the dismissal. Poor, that's one personal point. I think you should at least get the summer out of it, because they're not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere. Let them get the summer out of it and see how you start. And then if it's not right by September, don't wait till October, November. Then you can make your moves and changes. But at least give the guy a chance. 6 months. Come on. Let's be serious about it. Hearts don't have that finances to change it as quick as that. I mean, I don't know if you agree with me there, Graeme, but I'm disappointed the guys get the sack, as with any manager, because I know how hard managers work. And I think time just wasn't enough for him.
But if he's losing the dressing room, Graeme, and if things aren't going for him, I know what Dennis is saying there, but just things have not gone right the last 6 weeks. He had a decent spell, after the turn of the year when they brought in a few players and things like that. But just things have not gone right at all for him over the last few weeks. And Dennis, when you're looking at a manager who needed a point out the last 3 games before the split and couldn't get it, that's where Hearts supporters are right to question the appointment in the first place, and certainly obviously look for the fact that the guy wasn't doing a job, consistently over the 6 months he was at the club, he didn't do the job,
I've got to agree with you, and I've got to agree with Graeme that everything you're saying, I'm only putting another point to it, and it's only my opinion, but everything you're saying is correct. And there's a lot more that goes on that we don't know about. And basically, that's a decision Hearts have made. So when you look at it, you've got to cast it aside. Now, the guy's gone. And what Graeme's talking about now is who comes in to replace the manager. And that always is difficult, because even when you were bringing him in, you're saying to yourself, well, has he tried and tested at the level that we need in the Premier League? You're talking about a guy that's invisible to me, Graeme. I don't know him at all, that you would like in there. And then you look at Derek McInnes. Well, I don't think personally that would take Hearts forward. But again, only my opinion.
Yeah. Graeme, you're saying obviously the board's got to get it right, and you mentioned about possibly you wanted to discuss failings, I think, on the board. Do you feel the board is the right board to make the decision to get the appointment right?
No, not at all. There's no football person on that board. None of them. Andrew McKinley's not a football person. Anne Budge isn't a football person. Graeme Jones, I think, potentially is. But again, how much of this is going to be on him? I've got a big, big worry that the board are going to get this wrong. And again, what I find quite surprising is that Neil Critchley was sacked last week, and there's been no statement from Hearts to say what road they're going to go down, what kind of manager they're looking for, when the appointment is going to get made. Maybe that's just my own personal thing, but there's been nothing mentioned, and that was last week. And I don't think, I know we'll probably get to Player of the Year stuff later, but I don't think that Anne Budge covered herself in glory at that when she went to that thing last week, where she basically was asked the question about Critchley and she said, that's yesterday's news. I thought that was very disrespectful, personally.
Yep.
All you've got to do in that situation is say, I don't think it's right that I comment, sorry, and then just walk away. But she didn't do that. To say that was yesterday's news, I thought that was very disrespectful towards a manager that was just sacked 24 hours before that. So I don't agree with that at all. And I don't think we've got a football person on that board. And I am very concerned that even with the analytics, they will put out a list of managers that have got really good stats and really good data, but it's the board's call. And that's where my worry is. And a lot of Hearts fans have got the same worry as I have. It's the board that made the final call. Yeah. And they cannot afford to get this wrong. Now, Dennis makes a lot of good points there. But I think the worry that I've got, and a lot of Hearts fans have said the same thing, is we are 5 points off the relegation playoff.
Yeah.
If we lose tomorrow, That goes down to 2 points with 3 games to go. There's a very big concern we could get dragged into this. And I think, as much as I don't like seeing a manager get sacked, and yes, you can say 6 months isn't long enough, there have been a lot of decisions that I think he's got badly wrong.
Yeah.
When he came in, we were terrible. We had like 2 points on the board. He did do well to get us out of it, but then his remit in the end was to get top 6, and he failed to do it. And now the remit was to keep us up, and we're 5 points off the relegation playoff. So there's big criticism from me for everybody, Critchley, the players, and the board. But the board are culpable for this, and they cannot afford to get this wrong.
Yeah.
Who in the board is in the position to make the appointment? I know Anne Budge is the top of the tree, but when you say that there's nobody in the football world that is competent enough, if that's the word to use, to select the right manager, what are they going to do? Are they going to look at what's proposed to them and draw one out the hat? Or is it the fact of who they like the best? I mean, I just look at it and think, if you've not got somebody in mind, you don't sack them, because there you are in no man's land right now. The remaining games are crucial. You don't want to get into the relegations battle, and that's what's going to happen. If you change the manager, then you're bringing somebody in that is not going to be long-term, which is boy Fox, I believe, isn't it? Is it
Yeah,
Ryan
Liam Fox, yeah.
Liam Fox, yeah. So he's taking charge, and I'm sure he'll do quite well. But that's not your vision for the future. And I say to myself, the vision for the future is what's remaining in this league just now. And again, I would have kept the manager, if you're going to get rid of him and say, at least be in a position that you've let him see if he can keep you in the league, but have someone lined up to take a job. I just think you've put yourself really in limbo, and you could be in danger. The same way as I looked at Motherwell getting rid of the manager, and then you don't know what's happening. They've not got another manager lined up. And time is of the essence just now for Hearts, because you've not got a million games left. And I think if you was going to get rid of them, see, when you get beat with Hibs, you should have done it then, because it's obviously been in the pipeline since then. And then you've got a wee bit, 2 or 3, 4 weeks maybe extra to play with, and get a manager in before the end of the season. But no, the board of directors to me are good at a lot of things. But see, when it comes to actually making a choice with managers, they're dreadful. If they'd done that with their own businesses, they'd go down the toilet. They really would.
I think the other thing that went against Neil Critchley was the fact he didn't win a big game. He didn't beat Celtic, didn't beat Rangers, didn't beat Aberdeen, and he didn't beat Hibs, and that was a big one.
Yeah.
He had 3 games against Hibs and didn't win any of them. The only game that he won against the top 6 sides was Dundee United, and that went against them from the fans and the board, I think. He didn't have a statement win. Even if he wins the Scottish Cup semi-final, that's a statement win. Now, that's not all on him. We had a sending off. But he didn't have a statement win, and that went against them big time.
Yeah.
Where would you Graeme have had the cut-off point for him to leave the club? At what stage? I've mentioned the Hibs game. Would it be that you're keeping up your sleeve, and if you get to the final of the Scottish Cup, he's got a lifeline, maybe he'll turn the corner? Remember, Hibs were in dire, right? And the manager, who has now got an extended contract, was probably hours away from getting the sack, if not delayed for whatever reason. And look what's happened. He's a hero now. He's a hero. And that's the way it goes. I mean, we just need to look over the generations and history of football. Alec Ferguson and the success he had was probably a week away from getting the sack. And he turned out to be magnificent. And that's, again, why I think, is it just a bit of a knee-jerk reaction more than people would like to think? I'm not saying he would have got you anywhere, Graeme, by no manner of means. But I go back to it, 6 months. Come on, give us a break. Is it as bad as that now? If you don't do something in 6 months, you're out the door. What kind of job is that?
I think
you had long enough. Sorry, Graeme, on you go.
Oh, sorry. I think failing to get top 6 was pretty poor. But I was still at the point of, right, okay, it's not been great, but we've still got a Scottish Cup semi to look forward to. We can still get to a Scottish Cup final. Then we failed to do it then. But I kind of still thought, maybe with a summer window, he might change things. But that Dundee game last week, even I was at that game thinking, time's on the wall. Time's gone.
Yeah.
We are basically now staring at a relegation playoff. I never thought we'd go down automatically, but the relegation playoff was staring us in the face. And I think had he stayed any longer, you could tell from players' body language last week, they weren't really playing for him. And I think when you've lost the dressing room, and I think the worst thing is when you've lost the fans, because I tell you now, he lost the fans. And once you've lost the fans, you are up against it.
Yeah. The only thing I'd say,
definitely.
and repeat myself, is asking Liam Fox to come in there and save yous is a hard shift. And I think there's an element there that leaves you wide open for the drop. Drop, certainly in a playoff position. But no, I'm quite sad that Hearts didn't make the top 6. I think they were good enough. And I think the results have been good enough. And I think the two big clubs, as we talk about in Edinburgh, deserve to be up in the top 6. You need them there. And of course, as you see, your Hearts are now, it's no great. So, that's the decision Hearts have made. And I'm sure you'll get somebody else that'll pick up the reins and go, because I don't think you need a lot of players to actually make you into a really competitive Premier League team.
No, they've showed they can compete, but unfortunately, as Graeme says, they've showed they can compete in the lesser games, you know what I mean, against smaller teams. You know, they haven't won a big game. And as Graeme says, that's been probably his downfall, you know, the fact that, he can beat I was going to say he can beat a Dundee, but up until last week, that proved to be the case, you know, but I think that's going to be that's been the problem, Dennis. You know, it's all one competing against a couple of the sides around you, you know, but if you can't lift the players to get a win against Hibs or to get a win against, at least compete against a Rangers or a Celtic, you know, that's always going to be something that goes against them. Graeme, one of the guys that's been linked with the job, and I think he's one of the bookies' favourites, if not the Hearts fans' favourites, and I don't see why he wouldn't be, is John McGlynn at Falkirk. Obviously, tonight sees the Championship come to its conclusion, Dennis, and as I touched on in the preamble, the SPFL will be highly critical at times, but they've got this right tonight, you know, with the games on a Friday night, all 5 matches. Most of them mean something, you know. Obviously, the 2 big games, Livingston and Thistle, and obviously Falkirk and Hamilton. Livingston and Thistle means so much to both clubs. Hamilton, absolutely nothing to play for since they lost their 15 points. But what a finish it's been to our second division. Falkirk have blown it big style. You know, if anybody's shot themselves in the foot more than Hearts in the last few weeks, it's been Falkirk. You know, so how do you guys see this going?
Well, first of all, with John McGlynn, if he doesn't get the last hurdle, go over it, then you've got to say, to some degree, he's failed, right? But the disappointing thing is, then would people say he's not good enough for Hearts? Mm-hmm. So it's almost a catch-22. The point is, he didn't make it with Falkirk because he didn't get there. And if he does get in the Premier League, he'll be in the position where he'll want to stay there with Falkirk. I think Cammy's knees giving him bother, so we'll just carry on. If we hear a clunk, we know he's collapsed. So I do believe that somebody like John McGlynn would do a job. What about yourself, Graeme? What would you? I know you've mentioned the form lad, but who would you take from, say, Scotland if they were available?
I'm kind of edging more towards Stephen Robinson because of the job he's done at St Mirren. To get 3 top 6 finishes on the budget that he had, I think he's done a fantastic job, and I think he would change his style at Hearts. We've had McGlynn before in 2012, and maybe it was the wrong guy at the wrong time. I don't really want to go back the way, even though I think he's done well at Falkirk, but I'm just not sure it would work a second time. I would probably, for me, edging more towards Robinson than John McGlynn.
I would go without any question of doubt, Robinson, without any question of doubt, because his success rate at St Mirren and the job he done at Motherwell has been exceptional in my eyes. In fact, I would go as far as to saying people could laugh about it. If Rangers don't have this deal set up with the Americans, then they're going to be scratching the bottom of the barrel money-wise, and they're going to have to just do well in the Premier League to keep their sell in Europe. Then it wouldn't go too far wrong for a guy that domestically is capable of getting the best out of poor players, which they've got at Ibrox. So to me, I know people have got you having a laugh. No, maybe that's what we need to start looking at. What we have is homegrown men who can actually do the gig for us. But I don't know. It's a Hearts job. What would you say? If he's happy with where he is just now at Love Street, there's no Love Street anymore, but St Mirren, you would say to yourself, is it much of a carrot to go to Hearts? Is there that much of an ambition that you would say, I want to go to Hearts? Is it big enough club? That's what I would say. Is it a big enough club, Graeme? I know they're bigger than St Mirren, but are they big enough to attract them away?
I think we are, and I think he'd have a bigger budget. I think he always have a far bigger fan base. I absolutely do think there would be, and I think, maybe I'm being a bit arrogant here, but I think if he's offered a job like Hearts, I don't really think he's going to turn that down. I think he'd have a really good job at Hearts, and I think, talk about getting United behind the fan base. I think a lot of Hearts fans would actually take Robertson, and I think he'd be a good appointment personally for me. Yeah. If we're going to go down the route of someone that's in Scotland, I think I would rather go for someone like Stephen Robertson.
Mm-hmm.
Vargas 77's made a point in the chat, Graeme, and we'll finish off with Hearts with this one before we move on to the Championship. He basically says, I think if we get a Scottish manager, there's no point in Jamestown. Thoughts on that?
I said the same thing during the week. I think if you're just going to go down that route, then what's the point? Because Jamestown's meant to be the analytics that gives you a list of different type of managers, different styles of football. And if all we're going to then do is go for a guy that's in Scotland, then what's the point?
Yeah.
I said the same thing last week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're either in for the long haul with this, or you're not. You can't dip your toe in the water and just pick and choose. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Well, I'll tell you what, it's interesting times. What you've got to look at is the short term and where you're going to end up. And I just think it's not so much a big ask, but the players need to start turning up. They need to start having a wee bit of accountability and just show that they've got that pride in the club they're at, and don't let anybody down between now and the end of the season.
Well, that's the one thing I would say before we move on. That's the one thing I would say. As much as the manager and that does take the blame, I think those players have been an absolute disgrace for us to be in this position. I think they've let Critchley, Naismith and the fans down badly, and they need to start reacting to that. Now, I know that Liam Fox is an interim. He doesn't want the job full time, which I'm quite glad to hear. But I think he will change things tomorrow. I think we'll see a different Hearts team tomorrow. I talk about it so often on my own channels and stuff about you need players that are going to fight and play for that badge. And I don't think if a lot of them looked themselves in the mirror, could they say they've done that this season? I don't think so.
No.
Yeah. No. Well, it's a big test anyway, playing against Ross County up there, because they're fighting for everything as well.
I think that's the thing, and it's where we've got this split, where at least most games are meaningful, and Hearts, I'm quite sure, would rather that they weren't in the position they're in, but as I say, at least they're playing meaningful football.
Yeah.
In this time of the season, so that's one thing, I suppose. But they'd rather it was meaningful at the other end of the league than what it is, But moving into the Championship, Dennis, obviously start of the season, day one, you picked Falkirk to win the league. I picked Livingston. Both clubs level tonight as Falkirk, as I say, have imploded over the last 3 or 4 games. Livingston have come back. Now, I'm going to look at this from a slightly different angle tonight, and as much as 15 minutes for 12 minutes to kick off in both games. But if both sides finish level on points, it's going to come down to goal difference, as decided at the start of the season. Now, I've been thinking about this for a number of weeks anyway, Why, when we have a tie or a draw, between two sides, is it not decided, as in some other competitions, by head-to-head? Head-to-head, Livingston have taken 10 points from a possible 12 against Falkirk. Are we not in a position now where goal difference isn't as important as a record against your opponents?
No, I disagree. No.
Yeah?
No, I totally disagree. We're seeing it with Celtic. Celtic are going out in the first 20 minutes in games and they're winning 3 and 4 and 5-0. Then they could take their foot off the gas. Okay, it's a different situation because there's no one near them. But see, when you look at that league, you keep going for the jugular. You don't give up for 90 minutes so that at the end of the season, The goals that you have scored and accumulated will be dependent on whether you go into the Premier League or not. And to me, that's what goal difference is about. No, for me personally, goal difference is a must in a league throughout the season. Not when you look at goal differences in other aspects. I know we used to have it in away goals when we're playing European games and all the rest. It counted double and all that rubbish. But the thing is, no, personally, no, goal difference for me, I would keep. I'm sure there'll be arguments for it, but that's only my opinion.
Graeme?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. You know at the start of the season what's expected of you, and I think if
Yeah.
you win a goal difference, that's absolutely fine. I don't have an issue with that personally.
No. My thoughts is if you're in a position where your nearest challenger, and I know it's going to go out the window if you win 2 and your opponent wins 2, but with your nearest challenger, you've got a better record against them than what they have. You know, surely that is more important than how many goals you score or concede throughout a season, you know, against the other 8 clubs in the league, as it is in Scotland.
Yeah,
you know, so that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, but Cam, if you look at it, Rangers have beaten Celtic the last 2 matches.
Yep.
Do you look at it that way then? No.
No, I'm saying if Rangers and Celtic tie at the end of the season, which that's probably a number of seasons away, but if Rangers and Celtic tie on points at the end of the season, then surely Rangers' record against Celtic or Celtic's record against Rangers is more pivotal in how the season's going than the fact that Celtic beat Kilmarnock 6-0 and Rangers only beat them 5-0, you know, or Celtic beat St Johnstone by 3, but Rangers beat them by 4. You know, that's my thinking, is in terms of what your record is against the team that you tie should be more pivotal than, as I say, managing to go out and score 5 or 6 games in what effectively is a dead rubber. You know, that's
if you look at, but if you look and you set your team out to go and win games, you want to win it as best you possibly can with as many goals, because that's what the game's about. Now, the 2 matches I'm talking about, I know I've drifted into the Premier League, but it's probably because I've seen more than I have with Falkirk and Livingston. And if I look at the 2 Celtic games, we're back to back. They were 4-0 up within the first half hour or 5 or whatever it may be. The second half was a waste of time me watching the games, because what happened was Brendan Rodgers just put on people that were jersey fillers almost, because he's not got the strongest squad of substitutes that you might think. And he puts them on and the game just goes flat.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, that's the second half that the people that have gone to these games and paid money for should be seeing the stars continuing for the 90 minutes, because come the end of the season, the extra 5 goals we scored in that game is going to be worthwhile. And Rangers and Dundee United, they've all got to do the same.
Yeah.
They've got to make sure they don't concede the same as you don't score goals, or you should score goals. So, no, I'm totally against it, Cammy. I can't even see your point of view in that. I've got to disagree with that. But as I say, it's only my opinion. You've got to keep winning games with the most amount of goals you possibly can.
Of course you do. And I'm not going to say that perhaps as a second option, you know, if both sides, if Rangers win 2 and Celtic win 2, or if Livingston win 2 and Falkirk win 2, you know, or they've taken the same amount of points off each other, then fine, you use goal difference as a secondary, you know. But for me, your record against the side that you're tying with is more pivotal than when it comes to the decider. But listen, hey, it's something we can debate.
What you're saying, so tonight, if Falkirk and Livingston draw, and that's all their games played, you're saying that they should go and play each other again?
No. What I'm saying is that Livingston Livingston have won 3 and drawn 1 of their games against Falkirk this season.
Right.
So if they finish on points level at the end of the season, so say both sides go out tonight and win, you know, Livy beat Thistle and Falkirk beat Hamilton. So if both sides finish tied on points at the end of the season, then what should be the first deciding factor is your record against that opposing club, you know, the side that you've tied with. If then,
well, you could bring that
for
in.
instance,
the only time I would bring that into it is if both the goal differences are the exact same. You could add that as a second caveat.
yeah, so you'd have it the other way.
Yeah. Well, to
Fair
me,
enough.
putting it that way, I don't. I've got for the draw 2 games each. You know.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. So then
So
you go to goal
permutations,
difference.
but yeah, I don't disagree with the fact of the second choice I would have is if they're in the same goal difference, then I would look at the 2 teams who has won the most against each other,
Fair
and
enough.
that could be a way out of it. But we're not. That's hypothetical because we're nowhere near that.
No, well, that's it exactly. We've spent a few minutes
Graeme,
there
what
on
would you
something
think
that at
on
the
that?
moment doesn't count.
No, again, I agree. I don't mind the goal difference thing. I think this as a second option, then yeah, absolutely fine with that. Like doing what you've just mentioned there, Dennis. But I honestly, it's a bugbear of mine that I've had for a long time that, and I know that Hearts don't score a lot of goals, but it annoys me when a team goes like 3 or 4 up in the first half, and then second half it's a non-event.
Yeah.
If I'm a manager at half time, I'm saying treat this game like it's 0-0. Go and do it again. Because the fans want to be entertained. They don't want a second half dull as anything.
That's exactly.
Especially if you're away from home. If you've travelled a long distance and you've gone 3 or 4 up and the second half is a complete non-event, yes, you're happy you've won, but you're thinking, I wish we were going to score more goals there. Honestly, go score more goals. That's what football's about. Entertainment, scoring goals. Go and score more goals.
But people are going away.
Teams don't do that.
If you're winning, I'm using the Old Firm because they're the ones that seem to have the higher goals each game, or will certainly Celtic do. And if you look at it, if your team's 5-0 up, right, and the second half starts and you see it's mundane, substitutes going because it's an easy option, what do you decide when you're getting a wee bit fed up with it? You don't get your 90 minutes value of money, so you disappear. But if you've kept the team strong, you won't find that the supporters will be leaving the ground right to the 90 minutes because the other team is getting a bit of a kicking. And no, I'm sorry in that one, Cammy. You'll need to go and rethink.
That's fair enough. No, as I say, it was just a thought, you know. Possibly, by the way, if it was the opposite way about, you know, I'd maybe be turning around and agreeing with you, you know. But as I say, you picked Falk at the start of the season, I picked Livy. I'm just looking at a way that maybe Livy could win that league tonight, you know.
I'll tell you what.
Anyway, thoughts on it, by the way. Have Falkirk imploded? What's gone wrong with the Bairns, Graeme?
I think, I might be wrong, but I think they got so comfortable thinking this league was won and they've took the foot off the gas. They were 11 points clear at one point, and I think everybody thought that's it done. They've scooshed the league, absolutely no problem. And then they've just got a little bit complacent and they've fallen off. It's now 1 win in their last 5. Now, I think, to be honest, I don't think they could have handpicked a better team to play against last day than Hamilton. I think that is probably the best fixture they could have got. Because especially after the fact that Hamilton came off yesterday, knowing that they had that deduction, which I think is an absolute disgrace. Not that they've got it, but the way their board has treated those fans, I think is an absolute disgrace. Yep. But I think this is a perfect game for Falkirk. Now, yes, they will be nervous because if they don't score early, the fans might get nervous. But I think the fact they're playing at home against the Hamilton team that are relegated on the back of what happened yesterday, I think this is the ideal fixture.
Yeah. It's interesting to see how many Hamilton fans are going to bother making their way along the road to Falkirk as well, bearing in mind Hamilton next season, Dennis, is going to be your local club. You know, Hamilton are going to Broadwood next season. So there you go. You've got Clyde playing at Hamilton and you've got Hamilton playing at Broadwood. You couldn't make that one up. But that's next season when it happens, you know.
That's news to me. I mean, quickly, what's the reason behind that?
It's down to, I think, the guy who owns the stadium, and it's part of the 15-point deduction has come from this, you know, that Clyde, we know there was that debate a few weeks ago as to where they would be playing their games. But I think Hamilton have had a fallout with the owner. They are now looking at somewhere in Hamilton to build a stadium. They're not going to be playing at New Douglas Park anymore. So it's an interesting one, you know. So that Clyde, as I say, are going to continue at New Douglas Park. Yeah. That's another one, yeah. Clyde are going to continue at New Douglas Park, and Hamilton are moving along the road to Cumbernauld. Yeah. So there we are. Go figure that one.
The tie itself, Falkirk, I've got to win that game tonight. There's no middle ground. If you're going to be champions, then you need to actually start picking up. And the Falkirk's won 2 games out of the last half dozen, right? Livingston have only lost one. Now, what a run Livingston's come on. And you wouldn't have thought, as I'm saying, a way back, we would actually anticipated them dropping so many points. But Andy Millen, who's on the show quite a lot, Andy Millen said a way back, and he's the assistant manager at Morton, that the best team he'd seen all season was Livingston.
Yeah.
And we were talking a way back and about who would win the league. So obviously, I sent my stall out away at the beginning with Falkirk, and I thought, oh, home and dry. And you're going back a couple of months now thinking they're home and dry. But you just need to look at it and you go, wow, what a finish this is. And we've criticised the BBC, or no, the BBC, the Scottish League for not getting games on the television. It's nice to see and refreshing that there's a really competitive match tonight, or an important match being put on that should be worthwhile and everybody can see it. It's great.
Yeah.
Fair on what I've got it on just now. There is actually quite a decent Hamilton fan base there. So
yeah.
Motion detected at the front door.
Fair enough. As I say, hopefully they can cheer on Hamilton to a victory tonight. You know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm saying that obviously staying 5 minutes for the stadium. You know, but hopefully Hamilton fans can cheer their club on. As I say, I picked Livingston start of the season, so that's my reason, and also the fact I know what kind of shit show it's going to be in Falkirk Town Centre next season if Falkirk go up. So, a purely selfish and self-centred point of view, I'm hoping that Livingston go in and lift that title tonight. But I think it's highly unlikely. I think, as you say, Graeme, it's looking very like Falkirk couldn't have handpicked the opponent better to get back on track, you know, against that. And Livingston are coming up against a Partick Thistle side who done them a favour last week, certainly, you know, with that last-minute winner. But they're coming up against a Partick Thistle side who have got it all to play for as well in terms of securing that fourth or third playoff spot, but fourth spot in the league, you know. So our championship has certainly done us a favour in a way that our Premier League hasn't, you know. And when we look at across the other leagues, Dennis, obviously we didn't have a show last week, so we couldn't congratulate our growth on lifting the league the week before. So they've gone and won League One. Congratulations to Peterhead for last week lifting League Two, beating Ace 5 1-0. And obviously Celtic eventually saw the lifting the SPFL Premier League last week as well, you know. So every league's been decided, and we'll know tonight who our championship winners are as well. And then all we'll have left is the Scottish Cup to decide who's going to win that, be it Aberdeen and Celtic. And indeed, Aaron has asked, do we think Aberdeen have got a chance against Celtic? I'm assuming he means in the Scottish Cup.
You're asking me? Graeme?
No, Graeme, first of all.
Graeme?
Yeah, they've got a chance. It's called no chance. I think the last time they played them at Hampden, they got hammered 6-0. I don't think it'll be quite as comfortable as that, but I do think Celtic will be far too strong. There's no doubt Aberdeen have picked up, and of course, a one-off game, you never know. But I just think Celtic going for a treble, with that team they've got, with Daz Almeida in the form that he's in, I don't see any way that Aberdeen win that game.
Yeah. Well, Joppa's out for 9 months.
Joppa's out for 9 months, yeah.
Cruciate ligament. It's a terrible one to have. He'll be missed, but they were doing well before he got there. You know what? This game touches on what I was referring to 10 minutes ago, and that is game done by half-time, supporters deciding we're going away, you know. And
you think Aberdeen will win it that early?
Correct. I can't see Aberdeen turning up enough. I just, they're a shadow of the team that started the season, and they've never come back. So I don't know how they change. Now, if you look at it, we're talking about Hearts sacking their manager. His results have been worse than yours. The period of games that he went in a run, and he's still there. So, no, Aberdeen has been pretty poor. The players have never shown up again. They had a magnificent run, absolutely brilliant. We thought, oh, good, we're going to see somebody challenging Celtic. No, and I'll tell you what, you're right, Graeme. They've got a chance, no chance. Time will tell, though.
I think in a one-off game, there's always that shout, you know, and I think it's all they've got left for the season to play for, obviously, you know. Okay, they can still finish third, But no, I think Aberdeen, I wouldn't rule them out, put it that way. You know, I certainly wouldn't rule them out from giving Celtic a game, certainly, you know. And if Celtic, again, if they don't score early, I think that the Glasgow crowd will get on them, you know, so the Parkhead Faithful will get restless. And I think that Aberdeen could actually do something in that game, you know, and a one-off game, who's to say, you know, so no. Aaron's basically saying, as an Aberdeen fan, you'll be making the 3.5 hour drive down and they've managed to get 20,000 tickets, but it's 50 quid a ticket. That's mental. That's absolute madness, 50 knicker a ticket.
I mean,
You
talk
know,
about pricing fans that are Scottish football. What was 40? It was 42 quid for the ticket for Tannadice for Celtic fans last week. I mean, what are we doing here? St Johnstone did a while ago. Their fans put a tifo on saying 20's plenty, and that's right. Why are we charging folk ridiculous amounts of money for tickets for football? I mean, honestly, it's an absolute joke.
That's nuts.
The clubs are greedy and they're only interested in revenue. And
That's the SFA, surely, is it not?
Well, I mean, the clubs are deciding how much money they're going to charge. When you go to an away ground, the prices are put up by the club. They're not put up by the FA.
No, on that one. But as I say, for a Scottish Cup final ticket, 50 notes is ridiculous. Yeah. You know, and that must be decided surely by the SFA.
When you look at,
they're the body that's supposed to be looking after it.
For me, £50, I don't think is excessive. It's a product that lets you down. What you're really saying is the product is not worth £50. That's what I think I'm hearing. Because if that was, say, Arsenal and Tottenham in an FA Cup final, you'd be paying double, maybe 3 times that for a ticket.
Hamilton scored. Hamilton are 1-0 up. They've just scored in the first 4 minutes. 1-0 Hamilton.
Brilliant.
I can see that.
That's going to get restless. Yeah, Aaron, you're right.
It's interested.
Aaron, you're absolutely spot on. You know, 50 quid, you'd want a Champions League final.
Yeah.
You're not going to get it. But as I say, I think 50 quid, Dennis, irrespective of what the score is, it's excessive. You know, it's excessive for an FA Cup final. It's excessive for a Scottish Cup final. And it comes back to what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago in terms of public transportation. All we do is screw the general public. We are ripping fans off. We are ripping the general public off. And at 50 knicker, yes, the product isn't worth 50 quid.
No.
Spot on. You know, and 25, I don't think there's anything wrong. 25, 30 quid. 50's nuts. Absolutely nuts. It's excessive. And it's just screwing the fans into the ground again.
Yep.
You know, Aberdeen don't get to that many Scottish Cup finals. Sorry, Aaron, but it's true. And to basically turn around and say, listen, guys, we're going to take advantage of that situation. We're going to try and get £1 million from ticket revenue alone. Nah, that's it. And that's obviously for the Aberdeen fans. That's nonsense. Absolutely nonsense. But
their loyalty in going down to Hampden, when it's always a bugbear where you look at the north, they've always got to come down to Hampden. And I think sometimes it should be shared and it should be split. And I know it's a national stadium, but it's constant and it actually just, and you'll feel the same probably, Graeme, that basically it's always a west divide with the rest of Scotland. The rest of it don't seem to get a lion's share of maybe where travelling is not an issue, you know, and that'll never change.
You could say the same down south when it's Wembley.
Yeah, I know that. I know. It's just I thought.
You know, it's always London. No, I know. It's always London, you know.
Yeah.
You know,
anyway, the one thing the SFA and the FA has got right, that they've screwed us blind on ticket prices, is this week has been announced on the back of the Court of Appeal or Human Court, whatever the hell it was, whoever the Supreme Court making the decision as regards how we identify what a woman is. The FA and SFA have banned trans women from competing in women's football. Now, they can play non-competitive football, but they can't play in competitive football. Thoughts, Graeme? As somebody who, I know you've watched a bit of women's football over the last couple of seasons, is this the right thing, or should there be perhaps more consideration about it?
Has anyone told Joey Barton? I think it's a very difficult one. I get why they've done it, and I think, I mean, women should play women's football, men should play men's football. That's the way it should be.
Yep.
I think this whole gender thing does get a bit ridiculous at times. You know, I don't care what folk identify as at all. Like, live and let live, I'm all for that. But I think they probably have got this right. I think it's just taken a bit too far at times.
Yeah.
Dennis.
Oh, I'm not going to go in a rant about this.
The dinosaur.
Yeah, I know. I just look at it and I've got to laugh. You know, I think the last thing that these people should have in their mind is worrying about whether they should play football. You know, they've got issues where they've got Parliament and everything else all sitting and going around the table, and I just look at it and go, you can't expect somebody that's been a guy or a man to change whatever their identity is, sex or whatever, and go and play in a women's football team. Because as they have grown up, the muscles and the structure and the body is totally different. We've identified this with women's football. The flaw in it, if you want to call it that, is because of the way the male body moves and the female body moves slightly different. And I think there's an element there that creates the gap that we say women's football is not as good as men's football, right? And that's because of the genders. It's not because the females don't train as hard or they've not got a good touch, which a lot of them don't. But the bottom line is, no, I just don't believe that these people, is it attention they're seeking or is it to play football? I think it's just about attention. And I think a lot of them want to get a look at themselves and go and look at the world we're living in and not create problems when there's nothing getting done in Parliament. If you're creating a monster for these people to fix, go and have a look at what your life is really about and forget about playing football until you've established an acceptance of people around about you that this is okay for you to go as a man, which you really still are, to go and play in women's football. Yeah. And you also use changing rooms and toilets and God knows what else, that we're not made for that. And I'm like Graeme, I don't really care as long as they're not ramming it down my throat, but there's an element where they're starting to do that.
Yeah.
And just everywhere you seem to go, I'll use the word lightly. No, I'll not use the word because it's wrong to say it. But the thing is that they're just not right, some of them, in the way they're going about this.
Yeah. I think when it comes down to purely and simply even safety, you know, irrespective of anything else, you know, if you have got a guy who's playing in a female team, you know, and obviously, yeah, you're going in, it's a contact sport, even though they try to do away with that, but it's still a contact sport. And if you've got a 6'5" woman, in inverted commas, who's going in to tackle a 5'2" female, you know, or you're kicking a ball, and you know, I think in terms of safety, you know, it's something that has to be considered, you know, and purely and simply, even from that point of view, I don't think there is any way that someone who is previously a man or considers himself a woman, and bearing in mind, it is just considers himself a woman, you know, I'm not even necessarily talking about somebody who's gone through surgical procedures or anything like that. Essentially, if you're considering yourself or identifying yourself as a female, it's wrong. As far as I'm concerned. The only thing I would say,
Graeme, is if women's football could identify one of these people at 6'5", you just put them in under the radar and stick them in goals. Because I'll tell you what, that would maybe improve the women's game or whatever it is.
But it's like playing a ringer, you know. It's almost like playing a ringer. But anyway, you know, that's it, you know. So we're getting there. Graeme, what I will say, a couple of other things about women's football. We have had all our leagues, with the exception of the Championship, decided before the end of the season. Our Premier League was decided, well, it was decided at Christmas, but obviously mathematically it was decided recently. Again, you've watched a bit of women's football, and sorry again for bigging up Hibs here. But the women's game this season has been far more competitive. Our top league and the women's game has been far, far more competitive than what it has been in the men's game. You know, Hibs have done absolutely fantastic. You know, they went ahead and beat Rangers women last week, I think. You know, so you've got a 4-team race at the top of our top league as far as the women are concerned. Rather than a couple of seasons ago, it was Glasgow City, then you brought Rangers and Celtic in. You know, but Hibs again, and Hearts as well to a degree. You've been up there as well. I think, yeah, I mean, 2 80-year-olds in a wheelchair race could be competitive, you know, but I think it's one thing that deserves a wee bit of credit this season is the fact that there's been a competitive element in our top league in women's football, Graeme.
Absolutely. I mean, I think for far too long, women's football has had the kind of constant Glasgow women and that winning everything, but it has definitely changed. And fair play to Hibs, have had a very, very good season. Sadly for me, it's happening in men's football and women's football. It's not been a great time for me as a Hearts fan. But yeah, it's definitely...
Sorry, mate.
And I mean, obviously Hearts as well have just given Eva Olid a new contract, which is great. I think the job that she's done at Hearts this season has been absolutely fantastic, and fair play to her. But it definitely has been far, far more competitive. You're not seeing as big as scorelines in games now as used to be. I know that Dennis talked about women goalkeepers there. He is right, but it's not been quite as bad this season. So yeah, it has definitely been more competitive, and it's great to see. But the one thing I wish about women's football as well, and I wanted to touch on this, but what during the week, I do watch a lot of English football and a lot of English pundits and stuff, but Eni Aluko coming out and having a go at Ian Wright was an absolute joke. The fact that Ian Wright has done a lot for women's football, I think he's been a big ambassador for it. He's really talked it up. And for someone like Eni Aluko to say that he's dominating it after all that he's done for her in women's football is an absolute joke. And I've heard folks say, people don't go after Aluko because she's a woman. No, it's because she's a terrible pundit. She is one of the worst pundits there is. Not just in men's football, women's football. She is one of the worst there is. Honestly, the mistakes that she's made, and I know we all do it, but she's paid for this. And she just comes across as someone that has got very little knowledge of the game. And when she's coming out and having a go at someone like Ian Wright, who hasn't accepted her apology, and he's right, I just think she is talking absolute nonsense, and she needs to stop.
Yeah. Well, she has done. She's pulled out of, obviously, the commenting on the England's women game, the upcoming England's women's game, you know. So she's done that. I think she realised pretty quickly that she had messed up very, very quickly. Ian Wright is the wrong guy to go after in that respect, you know. Say what you like about Ian Wright, but yes, he's one of the biggest advocates for women's football, you know, and he's done a couple of games as a pundit. Yes, and listen, we're the first to criticise, or Dennis and I certainly are the first to criticise some of the female pundits who do men's games. I don't think Ian Wright is one of the guys you can criticise as knowing very little about the women's game, because he does, you know, he definitely does know what he's doing, and she's picked the wrong name there, you know, and I think she realises herself she's messed up. But Eni Aluko is one of these women who basically feels that she's due something, you know, and I think she's one of the ones who gives female pundits, female broadcasters a really, really bad name, because she's constantly whining, she's constantly moaning, and she's fucked up this one big style. You know, I mean, there's no getting away from that, guys, I don't think, you know. So she really picked the wrong name when she chose Ian Wright as somebody who's stopping her and for some of her female cronies from getting a job. But anyway, we'll move on swiftly, Dennis, because obviously time's getting away from us. Yep. We've got so much still to get through, but Europe this week, some fantastic games, possibly the game of the season. I managed to see it, so there we go. I'm going to give myself a wee bit of plaudits for actually managing to see a full game. Barcelona, Inter Milan. That says to you the Inter Milan defence against the Barcelona offence or attack should be something to behold. But what a game, and what a performance, first and foremost from Lamine Yamal. Absolutely outstanding game. And the other game, the Arsenal game, wasn't quite as good, but what a game that was in the Champions League.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. You know how you've jumped from women's football to real football.
The Champions League. Yeah. From
Which
Champions League to Champions League.
Our females are not qualified to make comments on people and players, the same as I'm not qualified, even though I have dipped my toe into management at senior level. The bottom line is, I would say that if you look at television, last night I watched the Man United game, and there was 2 females in the studio and Paul Scholes. Well, that speaks volumes for me. That's BT Sports, and I'm going, and then you look at it, and you have a female at touch side, and I say to myself, what is it with these females that think that they're adding value to the men's game? Right? They're not adding value. They're just getting people's backs up, because it's all cliches. They're not actually, as I keep repeating, adding value to it. So I'm just expanding on your conversation regarding the conversation that Ian Wright's had with it. So no, I'm no for it. You don't see a saturation of men getting involved with the women's game, either commentating or actually pundits. So I just think we need to get back to the people that are qualified to make judgments and calls on tactics of games at half-time that have gone through the course of that particular tournament and the particular sex that relates to it. It's men's football, it's women's football. Yes, I'm delighted when they're playing well, and I have seen a slight improvement, but let them get on with it. But I want to see the men's game with the likes of the people, and I know Graeme the last time disagreed with me that when I mentioned Rio Ferdinand, you disagreed with me that I thought he was a good pundit. And I look at it and I go, well, compared to some of the females that are there now, or even the likes of Paul Scholes sitting in the studio, no, there's a gulf there that we need to actually keep in line, I think, and get the best people doing these matches. And the one that jumps out at me without going on about the actual quality of the game is Ali McCoist. He's absolutely outstanding as a pundit or a commentator doing these matches. And I just wish there was more like it. And again, he's qualified to be talking to that degree. The Barcelona game, another absolutely brilliant Cammy, as you say. That's what you're looking for in the Champions League. And then again, last night, I don't know if anybody's seen the Man United game. Brilliant.
Outstanding.
Yes.
Superb.
And,
how anybody thought Athletic Bilbao could be the favourites for that competition is beyond me, because they were absolutely dismantled in that first half, Graeme, by an excellent Manchester United side last night, where they got that performance from is beyond me. But you're looking at potentially an all-English final between Spurs and Manchester United, Graeme.
I think that is absolutely mental, given how bad they've both been in the Premiership.
Yep.
But one of them was probably winning the Europa League. It's absolutely mental.
But Graeme, look who they've drawn.
I know.
They played Rangers. The 3 of them have played Rangers. And I think I said on here that after Rangers had played Bilbao, that I can't see how they are tipped to be favourites. And as you rightly said, it proved the point that they are poor and they were dismantled last night, as you mentioned. But yeah, it is interesting to see. And it also tells you as well, Graeme, how big a gulf there is between the Champions League and the Europa League. I think that's what that's showing.
How big a gulf there is between the English Premiership and the Europa League.
Yeah, I know.
Let's be fair about that one, But they say Athletic Bilbao look very, very poor. The Norwegian side, Molde, I don't think they're going to have enough about them, even at home, to take 3 goals from Spurs or 2 goals and get it at the extra time the way they did against Lazio in the last round. Manchester United, can they blow it? I don't think so. So they're pretty much home and hosed. So their European competition this season, we've already praised how great it's been, but potentially we could have English sides winning 2 of the 3 competitions. I think Chelsea are pretty much fingered already for the novelty competition, and I think they're looking like winning that one, and if we are looking at an all-English final between Spurs and Manchester United, who would you pick out in that one, Graeme?
I mean, honestly, it's just unbelievable. You've got 2 managers that have been under massive pressure, certainly Ange Postecoglou anyway, and you could end up with a trophy. It is absolutely crazy. I mean, Bilbao, I think, yes, they weren't great, but I think the sending off was a big impact.
Sending off didn't help. Yeah.
But they were very poor. I've praised Nico Williams before, but I thought it was quite poor last night for Bilbao.
Yeah, it was.
But fair play to Man United. They played very well. They looked like a team, which is not done all season. But it just really does go to show you. And you mentioned the gap between the Champions League and Europa League. Because for two teams like Man United and Tottenham to potentially be in the final of that competition, given the seasons they've had, it's crazy. And I think on the Barcelona game, I'm glad you mentioned that it was one of the best games I've seen this season. And at 17-year-old, Lamine Yamal is one of the best young talents I think I've seen for a long, long time. He is incredible, and he will be easily the best player in the world in a short time. He is that good.
Yeah. Would you pay 50 quid to watch him?
Oh, absolutely.
Aye, I might well do that. Yeah, even a tight git like me would pay 50 knicker for that one.
What a talent!
I think he's the best player certainly the better. And there you go. They're a statement and a half. The best player I've seen at Barcelona since Messi. I mean that's one of the daftest statements anybody I think could make. But it is fact. He is absolutely outstanding at 17 years of age, Graeme, as you say. And I think that's the thing that this guy's got the world in front of him. He's already been European champion Spain. He's already European champion with Spain. He looks like he could well, in all likelihood, win La Liga with Barcelona, and potentially, depending on how they got on in Italy, he could also be a Champions League winner, all before his 18th birthday. That's not a bad record, and I don't think even Messi accomplished that one. Well, he certainly didn't, because he couldn't be a European champion. But no, what a player. And as I say, fair play to Inter Milan. I think if any side is the one that's going to beat Barca, it's them. I think if Barca get to the final, I think they'll win it no matter who they play. I know you fancy PSG, Dennis, but for me, the only side that can stop Barca winning the Champions League is going to be Inter.
I'm still in PSG. I don't know. It's stuck in me because of the games I've seen earlier on, and I just think they've still to come back to the peak they were at for a wee while. Without a doubt, it's going to have a very good final anyway. It doesn't matter.
Hey, not very often you go to Barcelona, score 3 goals and don't win.
No.
Yeah, that's right.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Very good.
Are we looking at domestic fixtures, or can we mention one thing before we get on?
You
if you think about it, Scott McTominay at Napoli.
Yes.
Could well be Serie A winner in his first season there, and a lot of that is down to him. Since he's gone to Napoli, he has been absolutely outstanding.
Yeah. The thing is,
so McTominay could well win the.
Another player that's left Man United and set the head on fire, along with, Aston Villa getting, what's his name? Aston Villa got
McGinn.
No, Aston Villa from Man United.
Oh, Rashford.
Yes, slipped my mind. Rashford.
Rashford.
Yeah, the two of them, is incredible at Man United, have let them go.
Yeah.
And you look at some of the people who've got in that team, looking at last night's game, and there's some of them are no good enough for Man United.
No, indeed.
Anyway, okay.
Anyway, some of them no good enough for Man United women. But anyway, that's another sport we can bring up. Guys, it's almost 8:15. There's a game going on in football that we all want to watch. Yeah. I think if you're going along to a domestic game, get along tomorrow. Obviously there's games, Premier League, League One and League Two, Championships decided tonight. Get yourself along to a game. It's been fun to be back. Dennis and I will be back next week. Hopefully maybe with Paul Shanks. He was supposed to be with us tonight, but we'll maybe get Paul on next week. Guys, thanks very much. Remember, it's all happening on the pitch. Go ahead, like and subscribe. Go ahead and have a look at Graeme's stuff that he does. The guy is active as hell over TikTok. He's got his own podcast. You want to give it a quick plug, Graeme, before we wrap up?
Yeah, so I'm on YouTube on the Gorgie Boys podcast. That's my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Well,
And-
you keep in touch with how your management situation is going. Whenever you find there's a whole list being drawn up, we want to know who your prediction is.
Well, I've applied, but I've not done an interview yet.
Well, you've plenty of time. Plenty of time.
Hey, can you organise a party? But anyway, never mind. Guys, thanks very much as always. It's time to say goodnight.